What's going on, everybody? It's your boys Bill and Pablo out here. Obviously, I'm Pablo. On the other side, that's Bill. And we got a couple things to get into. It's my favorite time of year this year. It's the NFL playoffs. We had a whole slate of games yesterday. Loving the Super Wildcard weekend when we have three games in back-to-back days. I really think that's beneficial for the NFL. There was a lot of interesting stuff that happened yesterday on that football field.
Let's talk about the Bills and the Colts game. We both thought that was kind of going to be, a bit of a blowout, not a close game. Ended up being relatively close, 24-27. Um, I I just think I think that game, my biggest takeaway was that Bills defense is not as good as we all think it is. I think it is pretty much what they were in the season. They were about middle of the pack, about 15th, 16th in the league. And that's pretty much what they showed yesterday, where, you know, Jonathan Taylor was able to run quite a bit on them. And they gave up quite a few big plays, which was the most concerning of all those. If you're just giving up small yards, just making uh, Philip Rivers just, take small chunks of yards and make them drive all the way down the field. That's one thing, and we saw when they were able successfully able to do that. Um, Philip River wasn't that successful at converting touchdowns, and Colts as a whole weren't able to score that much. On the other hand, when they just gave up those big chunky plays, which Buffalo is supposed to be known for, that's what they were. They're an explosive offense. But yesterday it seemed like Colts were way more explosive. With I think they had way more. I think there was a stat at one point where they showed that they had way more over 10-yard plays compared to Buffalo had three at that point. I think it was sometime in the second quarter, and then Colts had about 7 or 10 at that point. So that's a bit concerning for me on Buffalo's side. Like that offense is only as good. More opportunities that offense for Buffalo will get, the better it will be. But if their defense is not able to stop people and it keeps giving up explosive plays, I don't think that's looking good as they move on to the second round. Uh, that's good. They got the monkey off their back. They got the first playoff win in what's a quarter of a century. And, they're moving on. They're all excited. Hopefully they don't, they takes some of the negatives from this game and actually improve on the next game, because I don't think that kind of performance will beat any other opponent. Colts, as we know, are kind of limited on offense. So that kind of was the genius of the coach, right? But other than that, I don't think Colts were all that impressive. Neither were Buffalo, especially on the defensive end. What about you? What do you think about that? What were your takeaways?
I'm going to have to disagree with that last point there. I actually thought that Indianapolis played above their weight. They were punching above their weight. I was impressed by how well they ran the ball. I think that has to do, yes, with Buffalo's defense being a little bit underwhelming yesterday. But I thought, hey man, I think Jonathan Taylor this whole year he's played well. He looks like he can be a really significant contributor to that Colts offense. My biggest takeaway in terms of the Colts is some of their I have to question some of their play calling. I have to question some of the coaches' decision making. I just don't know if in that fourth and goal that's really what you wanted to do. You know, they started off with three straight runs in when they were in that goal to go situation, and on fourth and goal, I think everyone knew that time they had to go to the pass. If it was me, I would have taken the 3 points and moved on. I understand why the decision was made. I think a lot of teams when they go up against these explosive offenses like Buffalo's can be, like Kansas City's can be, they feel that they have to play aggressive and they have to score touchdowns, not field goals. But I think at that point in the game, I actually was feeling a lot better about Indianapolis' chances than I had before the game started and at any other point in the game. So I think if they would have kicked the field goal, I also understand that, you know, if what did happen, if they didn't convert, that Buffalo would start at their own 4-yard line. Indianapolis had been winning the field position battle the entire game, that they would force them to go 96 yards. And I think it was under 2 minutes, maybe a minute and a half. But that's what happens when you play these types of offenses and these types of quarterbacks. That's exactly what they did. You know, it only took Josh Allen a minute and a half to go 96 yards and score a touchdown, which leads me to my second takeaway. And that's that even though the Bills the Bills weren't as impressive overall as a whole team, and maybe this game was closer than a lot of people expected, including me. I think I had the score to be 28-13. So, I had Buffalo right around the 27, 20, 28 point range. But the biggest takeaway was that Josh Allen looks ready, man. Josh Allen looks ready. He looked a lot more poised than he did in last year's playoff game when they went up 16 nothing on the Houston Texans. He looked like he came out with that killer instinct. He wasn't overly protected. He wasn't overly cautious, which I think really bit them in last year's playoff game and allowed Houston to come back. He was aggressive in that drive that we're talking about right before the half. He had two masterful throws to Gabriel Davis to each sideline. And Josh Allen, man, he looks like a second tier Patrick Mahomes. And I know that might be a little bit controversial, but he's got enough athletic ability and he's got enough just raw wheels on him to extend plays, to get out the pocket, roll out to his left, roll out to his right, keep the football and run it himself on some occasions. He's got enough of that. He's got enough playmaking ability on his own to really take this offense to the next level. And you pair that with the strides that he's made as a passer in terms of his decision making, in terms of getting more touch on the football, in terms of throwing into tighter windows, and just the confidence that he has. He's really turning out to be almost a complete package at quarterback, and their ascension has been right in line with his ascension. And I think that this year, what I took away from that game was that this year, with all the games that they've won and all the expectations that people now have of them being division champions, making the playoffs, being the number 2 seed, I think instead of that maybe being too much for Josh Allen, yesterday he carried that pressure excellently, and I thought he played really well. The Bills, as everyone has been saying as of late, the Bills are definitely a contender in the AFC, and I'm really excited actually and looking forward to seeing what they can do next round, even though that they did have a little bit of a scare. And I will agree with you on the fact that the Bills defense was underwhelming. They made that Indianapolis offense look capable, and they had a chance right up until the end to really drive down the football field and tie the game. So I think defense is definitely a concern for Buffalo when you start talking about going up against potentially explosive offenses like Kansas City, or if potentially they have to play someone like Pittsburgh, Baltimore, or Tennessee. Realistically, I think Tennessee would be their biggest headache just because of the triumvirate that they have on offense. Ryan Tannehill has been playing like an elite quarterback this entire season. Derrick Henry, we know what he's capable of, and AJ Brown is ascending. So if I was Buffalo, I would definitely be a little bit concerned for some possible matchups in the next round. But I got to say that overall, I was impressed with the Buffalo offense, with their ability to respond to any sort of Indianapolis surge. And I wouldn't be surprised if they're playing in February in Tampa in Super Bowl 55.
That's interesting. I don't know if I take Steelers as seriously as I don't even know if they're actually going to win today, but
Of
let's say
course,
they
of
make it out.
course.
Let's they make it out, and I don't think, but the Buffalo's defense is going to be scared. That's not a matchup. Like if I had to face Baltimore, or if I have to face even the
Tennessee,
Browns, I think, or Tennessee, any of those 3 teams scare me way more than Steelers offense. The Steelers offense has not been good. And the Big Ben kind of looks like, he has those really good like halves at this point. Doesn't even have full good games anymore. Where they make just enough plays because of their defense, which their all Buffalo's offense is good enough that they can match up with any defense. I don't think that's a big issue. It's more about who can take advantage of their defense, and I don't think Steelers are really that team. But the other 3 teams you mentioned, yeah, which could be their potential matchups going forward, that could be big. That could be big for Buffalo and who they have to face. And they may not. I don't think they're going to make it to the conference championship game. Uh, if that defense carries the way and plays the way that they did yesterday, because I think better offenses will be able to take more advantage of it, especially if you get a running offense like Baltimore or Tennessee, which just keep the ball and they'll never give it to Josh Allen. So then limited opportunities he has, he'll feel that pressure. He's like, this is my only shot I may get for next, maybe this whole quarter. So I just gotta try to score, and that's when he'll make a mistake. And that's typically what you don't want. So I think that defense needs to play better. if that defense was anywhere close to like what uh, Kansas City's defense started to play the second half of their season last year, then I would kind of be more, optimistic about their chances to proceed further in these playoffs and probably make it to the Super Bowl in February, as you're saying in Tampa Bay. But I think that defense really needs to pick it up. And I did not expect the Colts to move the ball. But I think everybody talks about Jonathan Taylor. He only had about 70 yards rushing. So it wasn't like a crazy, like he ran all over the Buffalo Bills. I think it was
Wasn't
more the
Cam
explosive.
Akers.
It was more the it was more the explosive plays they gave to Hines, and he had, I think, like 6 carries for like 70 yards himself or 60
Yeah.
yards, something like that. So I think that was a bigger. It's more the explosive plays. I think they're good overall, okay against a run. It's just they have a tendency to give up a lot of big plays, which I don't think bodes well for them against any good offense that they're going to face going forward.
I like what you said there. I actually think they go hand in hand, and that's why Indianapolis is a very interesting team on offense. At least they were this year, because Jonathan Taylor has become almost their bell cow back. He's the one running between the tackles. He's the one doing the dirty work, and I think that pairs really well with Naheem Hines and his skill set. And so that's why you're able to see, even though Jonathan Taylor didn't have such a prolific day, I think he was still a big enough influence and open the door, if you want to call it that, for Naheem Hines, those explosive runs. And right along the same vein, that's actually another concern that I would have with that Buffalo Bills team is that they pass, I think, somewhere along the lines of 60% of the time when they're on offense. Their
Mhm.
running game isn't necessarily what they lean on. It's more it's more of a second priority. It's a secondary priority. We all know what Josh Allen can do in that
I think
passing game can
yesterday
do.
I think Josh Allen had more rushes than Singletary did yesterday. I think he had 11
Ex-
rushes compared to Singletary had 8 or 9. Like it was, and he had more yards
exactly,
too.
exactly, and that's what kind of concerns me, to be able to play at different tempos on offense, and I just don't know if their running game is good enough to allow them to do that. Obviously, they feel that the passing game is the strength of their team, and that's why they have such a high percentage of passing plays. Um, as for their defense, I agree that it is underwhelming. It could potentially be their Achilles heel, but the way that these playoffs are shaping out to be, especially with very little fans or no fans allowed in stadiums, I think that favors offenses, and I actually think that their offense is good enough to keep up in a shootout with anybody, including Patrick Mahomes. Including that's also obviously if considering their defense, like I said, is underwhelming. The biggest fear for me for Buffalo is that either Tennessee or Baltimore, as we were just mentioning, could potentially exploit that defense with their elite run offense and really keep Josh Allen off the field, mitigate the amount of damage that offense can do in the time of possession. That's my biggest fear. I also had a really big question after yesterday's game, and that was more in terms of the losing team. Where does Indy go from here? Because Philip Rivers didn't play he didn't have a standout performance, but he also didn't play bad enough where his position kind of comes into question. I think more than anything, people have question marks about Philip Rivers is because of how long he's been in the league and how just downright pedestrian he looked his last year in the Chargers offense and at times with that offense in Indianapolis this year. So it's going to be really really curious to see where the Colts go from here. If they stick with Philip Rivers and they run it back, try to maybe fix some outside pieces here and there, or if they really go for a full on change at the position.
I think I think there's a reason they only signed him to that 1 year contract they did last offseason. I think they didn't really expect there was just supposed to be that clog, something, some kind of veteran presence until they can figure out that position. Instead of and they're paying a lot. Like they're paying him quite a bit of money, and they're paying Jacoby
25
Brissett to be
mil.
the backup, and he's getting 25 mil. Like that's a lot of money just contributing to the
Yep.
QB position. So
Yep.
I think that's where the trade for Wentz has been a big rumor. If you can trade for him, let go of you'll be paying him pretty much same what you were paying for Philip Rivers, not too much more because you paid. I think Philip Rivers got a decent portion for that 1 year.
25 mil.
So
Yeah.
yeah, so it's not. I I think they could move on, maybe trade Jacoby Brissett to some other team, and you free up that cap room, and you let Philip Rivers go, trade for Wentz, or I don't think they're going to be in a position to pick up any QBs in the draft. And I don't think they really want to do that. They're in a win now mode. That defense is pretty good. It's not outstanding as it was to start off the year, but finished off the year relatively middle of the pack. In the top half of the league, especially. So I think it's just they'll have some decisions to make. That's for sure this offseason, regarding their QB situation, especially. And also with T.Y. Hilton, I think he's kind of getting old. He was not the player that he has been previously this year. That's
No, he was not.
and they had to rely a lot more on Pittman, which he looks pretty solid for a rookie. He looked pretty solid. And then we'll kind of see where that goes.
I like Pittman. I actually think that the T.Y. Hilton getting a little bit less of the ball on offense has to do with the ascendance of Michael Pittman. I think they actually really like him also in Indianapolis. The coaching staff likes him. They've schemed a lot to try to get him the ball this past month or so of the season. And you know what? I also got to say that I think Philip Rivers played a lot better yesterday than I expected him to. He made some pretty big throws in some key downs to keep the chains moving, and he drove the ball down the field. Again, it could also be just that Buffalo defense being, as you said, middle of the pack. It could also be attributed to the Buffalo defense. But hey, I thought he made some really smart reads. I thought he really flexed his football IQ at times, and he was able to pick apart the defense. And on that 4th and goal, when they went for it, despite the fact that everyone knew that they were passing and the play call was a little bit uninspiring, I think he had a window in there to try to get the ball to Michael Pittman. I think a better ball actually gets them the touchdown, and they score a touchdown there. The complexion of the game changes, and we could be having a completely different conversation. So I think that Philip Rivers' performance was just enough, leave a bigger question mark for this offseason for Indy, as you were just saying. They have a lot of decisions to make, the QB position being probably the most important one. And I'm very intrigued to see where they go from here. If they really do believe in Philip Rivers and they give him maybe another contract for another year, or if they choose to go another direction. Hey guys, if you like this video, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe. If you think that Bill really has to do some work on his opinion pieces, let him know in the comments. It's been your boy Pablo. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. Peace.